Astrid, Tuminez, and Todd Pedersen, founder, chairman of Vivint. So we're holding an event on Thursday night. Hopefully you're all going to be there, called the Hall of Fame. And we're inducting these two fine people and amazing Utahns into the Silicon Slopes Hall of Fame. So first of all, congratulations for that. It's a rare group to get inducted into that thing. They used to have, so this thing used to be Utah Technology Council's Hall of Fame, and Silicon Slopes taking it over, but they used to have this conference room where it was like portraits of everyone who's been inducted. We don't do that here. I don't know how we do it.
I hate getting my picture taken. I don't know why, but you like having your picture taken?
I'm okay with anything.
Yeah.
So first question is like, what does it mean to be inducted into the Silicon Slopes Hall of Fame to both of you?
I'm curious. I want to hear you first because
Okay.
I haven't figured that out yet, but I'm going to make it up.
I mean, honestly, I was surprised. You know, it's like when Utah Valley magazine put me on the cover and called me Person of the Year, and somebody kind of pinged me in the middle of the night and said, "You're Person of the Year," and I said, "What's that?" So first of all, it was a surprise. I had to learn about it and see what this is. And I think the meaning of it, there was actually one objector, by the way. I don't know if you saw. There was one objector who said, I don't know if that was a public comment on social media, who said, "What has she really done for Silicon Slopes?"
I'm sorry. That was me.
Was that you? So I think the meaning of being inducted for me, probably on many levels, one is just what I do, because I have to separate a little bit what I do from me, the persona. So there's that. I think education is critical to Silicon Slopes, has always been, engineering education in particular, where UVU, the university that I lead, is a leader in that. We launched 3 new engineering degrees only 3.5 years ago. And they're fully accredited now. Civil and electrical have tripled in enrollment. Mechanical has doubled in enrollment. They're fully accredited. And we added that to computer engineering and software engineering. So when you think about the fact that 20% of worker earnings today are from tech, I think UV will be a big player. So I think that's part of what it means. The other thing that it means, I guess, is my own story of education and how that's been so important in my life. And hopefully that continues to be a theme for the Hall of Fame.
Wow. That was great. You really thought that out. Or not really?
I did not.
You kind of made it up.
That's free association.
Yeah, but that was, honestly, it's amazing. So, look, the first thing, do you want me to be honest? Yeah. The first thing I thought is, man, I must be old. and I don't feel that old, but I am in my 50s now. And interestingly, I retired of my position at Vivint. That was probably 8 months ago now. And the interesting thing about that move is something that's really important to me as I kind of think about kind of what's next. There are things that I'm working on, doing, that I'm busy with, things I'm trying to get in order, financially with my family, get on top of things that I really didn't have time to pay attention to. But one of the things that's really important to me, and I haven't figured out exactly how to engage in that, and there are things I'm doing, but is to allow myself to be engaged in a way that helps other people that are in the state, and outside of the state, but mostly in the state, learn from the experiences that I've had. It's not my intelligence, because I'm I'm medium on the intelligent level, but I have a lot of experience. I've made a lot of decisions, some of them good, some of them not so good. I've had a lot of experience in building different businesses, working and collaborating with banks, investors, partners, employees, structures around. There's just a multitude of things that I've done, and so very important to me is to not throw away the knowledge and experience that I've been given. I didn't make it was given to me, and help other people if they want to be helped, or at least have some advice going forward in what they're doing, and maybe avoid some of the mistakes that I've made, or learn quicker things that took me maybe 30 years to learn, because I'm not necessarily one that I learn something once and then I just go execute. I have to be hit in the face a few times. I'm like, okay, now I'm not going to do it. So there's that part of it. And so for me, being inducted into the Hall of Fame is it kind of means, you're it's not necessarily an older person, but maybe a little bit of wisdom in business and creating an environment that can create success in the state of Utah and for the future of Utah. So I want to make sure that as an inductee in the Hall of Fame, or one of the people in the Hall of Fame, that I can be there for people if they choose to have help. And not everyone does. Some people want to just learn it on their own. That's great too, by the way. But critical to figure that out, and hopefully you help me do that.
Oh, of course. So you said something there, Todd, that you said, I didn't make it, it was given to me. But you certainly made it. Those early years, like when you were going around like cleaning people's houses down there in Provo, I mean, it wasn't like you were handed a silver spoon by any means. You went out and built this thing. What were those early days like?
Well, so I don't know if a lot of people even know this, but before I started Vivint or Vivint Solar, when I served in LDS Mission. When I came home, I started a sheetrocking business and a house cleaning business. And I came from a situation where I didn't have any financial support from my family. And so it was work and earn or die. I had nowhere to go, nowhere to go to. And I didn't want to take out loans. And so honestly, it was really freeing because I had no choice. Some people, I think it's sometimes not, it's a curse to have the ability to lean on others financially. And you don't just have to lean on yourself financially, at least initially. So I actually loved it. I mean, I had homes that I cleaned in up on the Provo bench, all the rich people. I'd go knock on their doors, and and I think I'm one of those now. But
I may be knocking on your door to clean your house.
But I still do dishes. I still do laundry. I'm still good at all that stuff. But no, it was great. I mean, I actually honestly loved it and never felt bad. And as I look back on a lot of things in my career, it's always the harder years or the tough circumstances that really I remember and actually appreciate and love way more than an exit, financial exit in a business. That's just a fact, but it's not an experience.
And President, I'll tell you why we're inducting you. UVU is the largest university in the state of Utah. Your leadership, even in the short amount of time you've been president, has been remarkable for that university. I went to UVU, I proudly went to UVU, and I just think what you've done there, the experience you've brought, and your dedication to technology and entrepreneurship has just been unbelievable. And I think it's changing the state of Utah, I really do. Can you talk about kind of the future of UVU and what you're thinking in terms of this new technology building that we need the legislature to fund? I'm doing that for the camera because they'll see this. We need them to fund that. But could you talk about what you're thinking in terms of the future of UVU, why tech is important, and kind of your commitment to that?
Yes, absolutely. So for those of you who may know, we use the term dual mission to talk about UVU. Dual mission means we are both a community college and a teaching university. And that's important from the vantage point of tech, because not only is UVU educating engineers, but we educate technicians. We offer a lot of 2-year degrees like mechatronics, robotics, electrical automation that are very high demand and relatively high-paying jobs in the state of Utah. So the vision for UVU, and I'll set aside tech for a moment, the vision really for Utah Valley University is to become the most relevant university in the state. And relevance means relevance to the community, relevance to industry. Higher education is a sector that's being highly disrupted. There are many ways to consume education today. You could get your Microsoft certifications or your Google certifications. You could sign up for a 6-month course at Google for $39 a month, and they'll regard it as a bachelor's degree. That's what they say. And then we all know that COVID has also, upended everything. And so the habits of people are changing. From 2019 to 2021, we've had 1.2 million students disappear. They've simply not enrolled. And so given this situation, the value proposition of a university has to become ever clearer. And internally, we have to change our processes deploying technology. So UVU has a vice president for digital transformation, and I think we're the only university in Utah that has that, so that the way we teach, the way we process everything is informed by technology, and then that we produce the workforce. So when you go back to the time of Governor Levitt, and he asked Mr. Warnock, the founder of Adobe, what needs to happen for Utah to have something similar to the dynamism of Silicon Valley. The answer from Mr. Warnock was you have to begin with engineering education. And so that's what happened in Utah. That's why you have Silicon Slopes today. And if you think at growth, I think a ton of the growth in engineering and tech talent will come from UVU. I've already mentioned the growth in enrollment. And this building is critical because we don't have an engineering building. What we have is a computer science building that was built in 2001 when Geneva Steel was the headline. And I don't know if any of you even remember Geneva Steel. That was the headline back in 2001. We're in a very different economy. And so that building, without that building, we can't really deliver what we want to deliver. Even today, our seniors in engineering are doing their capstone projects in a warehouse that we've rented on 8th South, 5,000 square feet. And so it's really the workforce. As technology is changing, you need people who are not only educated in technology, but educated in communication, in leadership, who are unafraid to fail, who come from diverse backgrounds, because UVU is open admission. We take everybody, and that sounds counterintuitive for college. It is much more complicated, but we're simply saying we believe in the 95%, and we'll take them as they are, offer support services, help them succeed. And not everybody will get a master's or PhD, but you want them to have enough success so they could move on and live their lives and do their work better equipped than they would have been otherwise.
That resonates to me so much. That's why I don't dislike any of the other universities, but UVU, I think, has a much bigger, broader vision. It's not as finite or specific to a certain, type of individual that could maybe get into that school. So I love what you're doing. In fact, if they say no to this funding, I just think we need to vote for new people, because it is key and core to the state of Utah and the community for sure. But the demand for those types of jobs and careers, it's so obvious. So they are going to say yes, right? I mean, where's the camera? If you don't say yes, right, you're not going to be in office very long. There you go. I'm being serious too, because there are enough people that understand the need for this, and that doesn't just mean to fill the positions in our companies, which we can't fill, by the way. But it's the right thing for the state of Utah and obviously the community we live in.
Yeah, let me throw out a number. The Department of Workforce Services estimates that we will need 3,680 engineers every year until the year 2028. And the real number is probably higher, because Hill Air Force Base alone announced that they needed 5,000 in the next few years. And I really like what someone from Qualtrics said a couple of weeks ago in a room where he said, well, we were looking for engineers, so we drove from Provo to Salt Lake, and we just kept driving till we reached Seattle. So that's
sad.
That's an opportunity lost for
That's
Utah.
Right.
If you could keep the jobs here and bring the talent here and grow the talent here, we would certainly all be better off, I think, as a state.
Love it.
How do you think about, President, how do you think about the future of education? You mentioned like this Google program. There's a lot of different alternatives to education than there were, certainly even when I was going to school. There was no like boot camps, for example, or these various things. How do you think about the future of education, and how do you compete with kind of all of these new things?
Yes. So we need more rather than less education. So let me begin with that proposition. We need more rather than less education. And I worked for a tech company. I worked for Microsoft for 6 years before coming here. So if you talk to executives today, they know that tech talent, narrow, really good tech talent, you need that. You really need that for very specific tasks. And when you built your company, Todd, you know that you need those people. But above and beyond the narrow tech talent, the skills of, which is almost a cliche, right? If you look at the World Economic Forum, what are the top skills for the 21st century? Collaboration, communication, resilience, learning to fail fast. And I love that UVU accepts everybody, because I think, if we can say to you, we don't care about your past. Why did people call you a failure when you're only 18 or 23 or 32?
Or 53.
Or 53 or 57 in my case. I'm older than you. So it's really a myopic view of the world. So we need more education, and I believe universities as a setting still have a big role to play. Because in universities you get exposed to good, bad, ugly, wonderful professors. You just get exposed to all types. You get exposed to classmates who were 4.0 and classmates who may have nearly failed high school or got bullied, or you get exposed to people who completely disagree with your political views. Or you see disabled people, or you get to go to athletics events and you get to go see the arts. There is something to be said for that little microcosm of interacting with the world and learning to live with differences. And the buildings do matter, face-to-face do matter. We are more healthy mentally and emotionally with face-to-face interaction. So I feel that universities can compete, but we cannot stick to the same traditional ways. We have to enhance the things we do online, not just flat online experiences, but textured online experiences. We have to care about mental health. There's a whole richness to that university setting that you will not get from taking a 6-month Google course online, although certainly that Google course can get you a job, if that's the sole purpose that you're after.
Yeah, if UVU didn't accept everyone, I wouldn't have gone to UVU.
What was the grade point average? I'm 2.7.
Me?
Yeah, in high school.
Way lower than that.
Lower than that?
No. Yeah.
And I thought you were an overachiever.
No, it's way lower than that. It's embarrassing to even say.
But can I just ask my colleague here? So think about hiring. How would you define an educated person ready to lead in your organization?
Look, the funny thing is, I really don't care that much about anything previous to university level. It's experience, it's attitude, how they treat other people, their drive, their ability to explain vision inside of whatever project they're working on. So the education is very broad. We hire people that don't have degrees, although it does always help. And I think it is, as you were speaking, I think to a lot of the people I had in my organization, and I think they learned a lot of their ability to work in kind of like a community inside of like a team from the university level education. But there's a wide variety of types of people, and I think this does create that, and others do also. I think, and then some people aren't suited necessarily for university, or they feel the need, maybe, and it's from a family situation, they want to do a shorter program, get a job, and provide immediately. So yeah. I do love the fact that there's a lot of choices, whereas when I went to school, it was university or, I'm a dropout, even though you guys graced me with a fake, honorary degree. I thought it was
a well-deserved
honorary
degree, because we believe in experience and competence.
Yeah. So, but I think a lot of that does come through the university. And look, how do I say this with not offending another campus in the Valley? I think the diversity piece, and not just cultural diversity, but diversity of thought, of maybe IQ level, possibly, is very healthy, incredibly healthy. And sometimes universities get so focused on what were the grade point averages, what was the ACT, SAT score, that you get only one type of thought process, and that does not create, I think, what most businesses are looking for even.
Yeah.
So I love what you all are doing.
I just want to add that what makes UVU unique also as a dual mission institution is we do offer a lot of short-term certifications, and we consider those completed credentials. So we have over 50 certificates, we have over 60 associate degrees, we have over 90 bachelor's degrees, and we have 11 master's degrees. So when you're open admission, the menu of options that you offer should fit the profile of the incoming students, because they all have different levels of preparedness, different levels of interest, aptitude, etc. So it's wonderful that we have it from certificates all the way to the master's degrees.
We're inducting the two of you because not only of your career success and everything you've accomplished, but because you're two of the most important and prominent leaders in the entire state of Utah. And I wonder, I'd love to ask you both this question, and whoever wants to go first can. What's the most important and impactful leadership lessons that you've learned in your career and in your life?
Do you want to go first? I'll just start. Go ahead.
Okay, all right. So the question is, what are the most impactful leadership lessons? I think some of the most critical leadership lessons I learned in my 20s. I had the opportunity to lead the Harvard Project for Strengthening Democratic Institutions in what was then the Soviet Union. So we went in there. We were the first Western institution to open an office before the IMF or the World Bank or the EBRD came to Moscow. And there was a gigantic hunger from Soviet leaders, Russian citizens, and non-Russians for that matter, for anything that we could teach them. And because we were Harvard University and had this brand name, of course, we thought we had all the answers to everything from market reform to democratic reform to how to police a city, how to have better inter-ethnic relations. And I learned the meaning of failure from that experience. I learned the meaning of hubris. Don't be so proud, because culture and historical factors are so powerful and so strong that when Putin came to power in 2000, it was just the pendulum swinging to exactly where Russian history and culture would have taken this country. So I really learned humility. That's one. It's important for leadership. The second thing that I learned was the ability to be agile. The situation was constantly changing. When I got there, I had to bring 10 computers, 2 printers. Some days there was no gasoline, there was no paper to be bought in the entire city of Moscow. So you just learn to be really, really agile and to problem solve. So that's another lesson in leadership. Agility and problem solving are really critical. And then third, I learned the importance of hiring the right people. One of my best hires was a black marketer. He was Russian. He was actually Korean, but grew up in Sakhalin Island, which is part of Russia. And he could do anything for me on the street, but I was working for Harvard University, and I think he was pretty shocked that I offered him a job. He had never worked on a computer. I had to teach him how to use Word. And he's so talented, and I believe in human talent and really giving people the opportunity. He became the first Russian citizen managing director of Morgan Stanley. Wow. And so he's let me use his nice apartment in London, so it has its perks. So those are some of the 3, I think, early lessons I learned that have served me still pretty well over the years.
So, when I really think back about the most important things, and a lot of people either have businesses here, want to create a business, you're part of a company. One of the key things is that I think a lot of us think that people, when we hire people or start to form an organization, that people work for money. They have to earn money to pay their bills and, to get ahead and have some comfort and relieve some stress. But they really work for a cause one, and for self-improvement. I think most people, if it's just working for a paycheck inside of an organization, they don't last long. And they're not going to deliver the best work either. They're not going to feel good about who they are and what they're doing if it's just getting paid. And that's something that became obvious to me over 30 years. And it's something I think I was fortunate to be part of. I don't know if I was able to pinpoint it, but there are many years where I couldn't pay the most. We didn't have the most resources. We didn't have maybe the sexiest industry that we were in at the time. But people believe in doing good for each other inside of an organization. And if you have customers, whether it's consumers or businesses, they want to feel like they're doing a great job in delivering great service to people. And if they feel like the organization believes in those two things and supports that, and then again, the second thing, allows those individuals to increase in their knowledge, skill set, leadership, that really becomes meaningful to people, much more so than what's my bonus structure, what does my stock look like. Not that those aren't important. Of course those are important. We have to pay our bills. So that's kind of one segment. And then the other is when we ignore our intuition, when we're working inside of a company with people. And intuition, truthfully, it comes through experience and paying attention and listening. Intuition just doesn't come. We show up in a room and we have intuition around making a decision with something. We get intuition through effort, in my opinion. And when I've gone against my intuition on an individual or a project or an investment or an acquisition, let's say, and I go against my intuition, again, based on years of data inputs, it's almost always wrong. So, it's really hard because I think at times we think we have to do what the group thinks we should do, but when you do have the experience and you're the one in charge, you have to actually trust yourself. And again, trust yourself based on information. If you put the time and the effort into what you're doing, where you're trying to go, and especially the people that you're involved with. If you don't know them and what they're about, then intuition doesn't work all that well. But if you really do, intuition is kind of a natural process. And that even includes sometimes letting people go. And not just that, but there have been many times where because of a relationship or there wasn't a single time I enjoyed firing someone. I've fired a lot of people over the years. Let them go, whatever you want to call it. But many times it was a relief to the individual to be taken out of the responsibility they had. Either they didn't enjoy the job or the position or the team, or maybe it was too stressful. So those two things, intuition as you're building, whatever you're building, even a university I'd follow your intuition all day long because of the time and effort and the belief system you have in what you're doing.
Todd, you talked about kind of this next phase of your career, mentoring kind of this next generation, teaching them kind of the experiences you had. And this question is for both of you as well. I wonder, were there mentors or a mentor that the two of you had that really helped you throughout your career?
Yes, I've had many mentors. The first and most important mentor was probably my first grade and second grade teacher. So some of you might know my background, that I was raised in the slums of the Philippines, and the Catholic nuns found my family and offered us places for free in their school. And when I started school, I couldn't spell my name. I didn't know the difference between 0 and 100. And this teacher that I had was very, very strict. But she was the kind of teacher who, she actually sat all the girls, this was a convent school, by smartness. So smartest girl, first seat, first row, the dumbest girl, sixth seat, sixth row. And she put me in the sixth seat, sixth row, which is kind of brutal in hindsight, but shaming works. And so I just looked at that first girl, first row, and I had all this resentment, and I'm like, I gotta get in that spot. And I think one thing that life in the slums teaches you is to be tough. So I learned to read pretty quickly, and this teacher, as soon as she saw what I could do, there was just no stopping what she would give me to do. She gave me everything to do. When she left the classroom, she would hand me a big stick and say, "You're in charge." And actually, that was not such a good thing. Corporal punishment was allowed in that school. So she was a mentor in that sense, that somebody I discovered for the first time in my life that I was good at something. And that's really important for kids, to know that they can be good at something and that adults will entrust you with as much responsibility as you can handle. Another mentor that I would single out is Gary Browning. He was my professor at Brigham Young University. I came to Utah at the age of 18. And again, didn't have any money, and I went and applied for a job as a secretary to this professor and had me take a typing test, which I failed miserably because I didn't know the spacing between "Dear Mr. Smith" and the date and the first line. I didn't know where anything went, so it was just a jumble. And he looked at that test, and he looked at me, and I could tell something was wrong. He said nothing, and he said to me, "Oh, why don't you take a spelling test?" And I took the spelling test, and of course, I'm a 1,000% speller. Like I am crazy when it comes to spelling. I see errors all the time in published books. So I did so great in that, and he gave me the job. So I worked for only this professor my entire time at BYU. And not only did he mentor me in Russian, which was my major, in showing up for work, he mentored me in character. This is a gentleman who was possibly the most Christian person I've ever encountered. And he just mentored me so much in character, how to be a true, solid, kind person. And you can disagree, but be kind. And then the third mentor I would mention is my former boss in New York, David Hamburg. He has passed away, but he was a psychiatrist and the recipient of the Presidential Medal of Freedom, which is the highest recognition you could get in this country, in the United States. And he was the person who showed me where we could be in the White House and he would treat, Hillary Clinton the same as I saw him treat the mail person in the mailroom. And he was excellent in building bridges. And because of the work that he had done, the United States actually was able to help in denuclearizing the newly independent post-Soviet states, Belarus, Kazakhstan, and Ukraine. And I had a front seat to these kind of, historical dynamics in geopolitics and international affairs because of this man. But like Gary Browning, they showed me character. That at the end of the day, I, like them, I want to look at myself in the mirror and like get a good night's rest and live with myself. And that's not always true of people who become successful. I think it's in a way a lesson in itself that we have to have that part of ourselves taken care of as well. So those are three mentors among others.
That's cool. So I kind of segment mine into three. Well, I mean, maybe it's three, two individuals and then a group. And this may seem cliche, but I think about my parents as my first mentors, and it was not in the area of business. My mom grew up on a dry farm in Idaho, incredibly poor. I actually grew up on the lower west side of Idaho Falls, so I don't know if that's the slums of Idaho Falls, but that's where I grew up. But I can't quite compete with that. But so, and then my dad's dad was a tailor. His dad had moved from Denmark, also, pretty poor. And so, although my dad was an orthodontist, had money, they didn't talk about money or business or investing at all. It was kind of a taboo topic. But what they did mentor me on were a couple of things. One, they didn't parent me much. There were 11 kids in my family. And if we wanted to do something, and I'm saying just about anything, it was our choice. And that was good choices and bad choices. And they allowed us to take the benefit of whatever decision we made, including negative consequences, and have to work ourselves through those. So I look back at how my parents parented me. One, their example of how, you mentioned kind. I had the kindest parents, and they were just nice to everyone, and were generous of their time and attention to other people that were around them, regardless of circumstance. So that was incredibly important. And then again, I failed a lot. I was in a boys' home at 14 for quite some time because of my incredibly bad decisions. And but my parents let me suffer the consequences. They didn't force me ever to do anything. And so I think that kind of led to, when I did start my own business, I wasn't afraid to make decisions. Now, I wasn't pipe bombing a bathroom and when I was running a company, but I did have failures. That was an epic failure, by the way. Don't ever do that. But they allowed me to make mistakes and then figure out how to clean those up. And so in business, a lot of times we have the capability and the knowledge, but we have too much fear. And so we're unwilling to put ourselves out there in an uncomfortable position to try something that others might say, well, you can't do that, or you shouldn't do that. That's not the norm. That's not what people do, because we're going to fail, and we are going to fail. So there's that, and then I served a mission in the Dominican Republic, and my mission president was a bricklayer by trade, but then it ended up owning a bunch of real estate over time, and we talked about business all the time. I was going to go back and be an orthodontist. I thought. I didn't. That's because that's what my dad did. And he was like, no, you're absolutely not going to do that. You're actually a pretty good leader. You are willing to do, and I won't bore you with stories of what happened to my mission, but you're kind of fearless in most things that you do. So you're going to go build something substantial that benefits a lot of people and blesses a lot of lives. And you're going to use your leadership skills. I'm like, yes, sir, I'll do that. And by the way, over the last 30 years, he calls me, not every month or quarter necessarily, but calls me to remind me that I'm not doing enough. I'm not thinking big enough, and I'm not affecting enough people's lives. And every single time I say, yes, sir, I'll do better. So he really is someone that absolutely pushed me throughout my life to try to do better and do it in a way that's principle-based and it's not just money-focused. Although that's, when you run companies or do business, that's a kind of a byproduct. And then probably the most important mentorship that I've had is observation, I would say, which sounds weird. But I've been very, very, very blessed to be around incredible people my whole career. And in fact, we were talking about my wife threw me a retirement party, which I hate. That sounds so bad, but it actually felt like a funeral that I was sitting, my own funeral that I was sitting in, because people were talking about me as if I wasn't there. But I was surrounded by people that I learned life's lessons through the people I worked with, side by side for 30 years, and some of them for north of 20 years, a lot of them actually. And I got to watch how they made decisions, how they operated, how they treated people, how they treated their families, their friends, how they interacted, how generous they were outside of just a work scenario or an investment. And really just had the real pleasure of having real deep personal relationships with the people I worked with. And it's what really, really formed me. And you think the leader just leads and, does it and is so great that, by all of our, expertise and knowledge and, skills that we're going to just show everyone else how to do it. That's just not how I am. Through those years, 31 years of running my companies, I had a couple of everyone has struggles, had a couple of different situations that were so ground me down so hard I could barely lift myself up on my own. And it was my family and my colleagues that I worked with that and I would, we're not in church, and also for me it was God that got me through those situations and helped me last long enough and survive long enough that I could come back and have, maybe the confidence again in myself and my abilities to really thrive again. So that's probably the most impactful thing, or the people that I've had around me. And I think about it, I'm like, geez, why me? Why was I so fortunate to have the experience and the opportunity to work with the people I've worked with? So.
I have one more question for both of you, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time here. If you have a question, once we're done here, feel free to raise your hand. You guys would take a couple of questions, right? But what, President, there's something happening in Russia and Ukraine right now, and I feel obligated to ask you about it, given your experience, knowledge of the subject, and everything that you know about it.
I'm actually super interested because my stocks keep going down, and so is my crypto.
If you ask the Russians, there's no crisis, but of course the rest of the world thinks there is a crisis. I mean, I am concerned about the possibility of war and Russian, occupation of certainly parts of Ukraine. But this is. I think this conflict has a long history, and if you think about what is important for Russia is really nothing new. They want their place in the world. I wrote a book on Russian nationalism in 2000, so the book is old now, but it looked at 150 years of Russian history. And I think the core of Russian national identity is for them to have a place in the world, and they've been an empire for the longest time. What happened when the Soviet Union was broken up was Russia's borders shrank to where they were in 1725, roughly, when Peter the Great died. And so you have this empire that shrank, and suddenly they didn't know their place in the world, and you had this thing called NATO. And NATO became this, thing that expanded. I think one of our biggest mistakes probably was the expansion of NATO, where we've said up to and including Ukraine under former President Bush. And I think that was the line for Russia. That was crossing the line. And so the conflict with Ukraine has been going on for a while. As you know, eastern Ukraine is very heavily dominated by a Russian population. They took back Crimea. Crimea was a territory they fought the Turkish Empire for, and it was given by Khrushchev to Ukraine in Khrushchev's time, because Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union, so it was still part of the same country. This is not to defend the attack and taking over of Crimea. This is to try and explain why Russia is behaving the way it is behaving. And I think what they are asking for, looking for, are guarantees of their security, which I think if we are to negotiate, if President Biden and NATO negotiate with Russia and Ukraine, it would have to include some guarantees that NATO will not expand to Ukraine, which is on the border of Russia. On the other hand, I think Russia will have to promise that it will respect the sovereign borders of Ukraine. Because every time a country attacks another country, that's not very good. We're setting a behavior that should not be acceptable in our century, although that does still happen, right? People still go cross borders. When Iraq did that with Kuwait, we went and attacked Iraq. And so it's really what we're watching is still the impact of the end of the Cold War. And a very dear friend and mentor of mine, Ambassador Frank Wisner, was actually at UVU last week and gave a couple of talks on this subject. And one of the things he said is that he was fairly confident that Russia would not attack. He believes that Putin is using this as a political kind of gamesmanship, that if we indeed promise NATO will not expand to include Ukraine, that would be sufficient for Russia. And Ambassador Wisner also said that it's been very clever of the Biden administration to say over and over and over again that we believe Russia's attack is imminent, because by saying that, we remove the possibility of Russia using any pretext that Ukraine started the attack. Because for weeks we've been warning that Russia's attack is imminent because they've amassed all these troops on the borders. Now, the worst case scenario is an attack does happen, that you will have refugees, I don't know how many, and that there will be more sanctions against Russia, so that impacts Europe, that impacts energy supplies. It's going to be bad for all of us. But at the same time, Russia is unlikely to back down. The population is behind this, and it's very interesting to watch my Russian friends just fully support this. So
support a full takeover of all of Ukraine?
Not a full takeover, but support the position of the aggressive position vis-a-vis Ukraine.
Which, by the way, and again, I don't know much about this other than I've thought if we had someone like Russia or China partner within something not called NATO, but something different that Canada joined, and on the Canadian-U.S. border, we'd probably be pretty bugged. I don't know if that's probably how they feel, right? If
Correct.
all of a sudden,
Yeah.
Canada's like, okay, we're friendly now with China,
Yeah.
and they're going to deploy some sort of missile system on our borders.
Yeah.
I think we'd be quite bothered. So I'm not supporting it. I'm just saying it makes sense that they're bothered and concerned, but
Correct.
my stocks are still going down though. So
So the two sets of interest really, and I know this is not a discussion about geopolitics, is to come up with an arrangement that is acceptable to Russia for its security. And it's not NATO unless you say Russia will be part of NATO, and we did have something going like that called the Partnership for Peace, but we scuttled that. And then the other side is Ukraine's territorial integrity. So diplomacy is central to coming up with an outcome on these two sets of issues, I think, to be fair to both sides.
But do you really believe they're not going to? Now, is there going to be a full-out war? I have a hard time believing that.
I do too. Yeah.
But I do think they're going to take over all of Ukraine. It seems unlikely they wouldn't do that to me at this point.
I hope you're wrong. I don't believe that they're going to take over all of Ukraine. I believe that they're capable of military action, though. And war would be the worst possible outcome. And I don't believe NATO will go to war over Ukraine.
No, of course not.
So NATO has, out of border conflicts. That's an issue for NATO, because is NATO going to go to war, for example, over the Baltics, over Ukraine, let's say over Taiwan? There are all these very interesting questions, and my own view is that NATO will not go to war over Ukraine.
I agree with that.
Does anybody have a question? Yeah.
So this one's for Todd. I know you're a very charitable man. So at what point in your career did you decide it was important to give back to the community of Utah? And when was that moment where you were like, I've made it myself, but I have to give back to Utah? When was that moment for you?
Well, so what's up, Luke? He's like a child to us.
Good
Well,
to
you
see
are
you.
a child.
Yeah, it's my last name.
Child. Yeah.
Yeah, we go way back.
Interestingly, back to my mission president. Now, I didn't have much to give when I first started my core business.
Yeah.
But that was one of the core principles he talked about, was give more than you can afford.
Yeah.
And I've tried to do that my entire life. Now we're at a point we can afford more, but even as a business and not just individually, it was always very important to me to have a charitable arm inside of our organization. And it wasn't not just dollars. It was time and resources, which a lot of times is time. Writing a check is not that hard.
Yeah.
But giving of yourself and your time and that's a bigger investment than money every single time around. So that was something, again, very incredibly ingrained in me from my mission president. And now I'm married to someone who believes in that and always has in a very big way. And typically when someone asks for a donation, and look, we get asked a lot of different things, but
Sure.
We're most interested, and funny, this has been a big discussion for my wife and I, and also my children. They're participating in these discussions. What do we want to do with the blessing of wealth that we've been given? Because it's not just for us. It's, what can we do in this community, in this state? Probably don't have enough to impact the United States or the world, but maybe a little bit in the community. What are those things that are going to have the highest impact on the most diverse group of people inside of this area? To this point, it's been mostly supportive expansion of incredible hospital organizations like IHC, and we're going to announce something pretty soon there's a new children's hospital, primary children's hospital being built in Lehigh. Awesome. So my wife really, really wants to support that. So I just think it's important. And by the way, and anyone who's made any money at all, that past really taking care of your basic needs financially, having a house, vehicles, not stressing over if you know, a car breaks or you wreck one into a wall the other night, which I did. Whoops, it was slick. Stuffed a car into the side of a wall. And you can fix it and not stress you out too much, and then be able to take care of your family and your basic needs. Not a lot of joy comes past that. Maybe you get to go to a nicer restaurant or a better hotel or something like that, but that doesn't increase joy. It's a little bit more fun and better tasting. But I think it's something. I think Utah does have that culture. I think it needs to gain more momentum, especially in Utah County, truthfully. Salt Lake County, I think there's older generations of wealth that have been set up and have started the leadership of, hey, we're going to start, committing our capital to organizations that can really impact a lot of people. Gail Miller is one of them that I really, the Huntsman's obviously back in the day and still to this day, but Gail Miller is absolutely amazing. And this last donation we'll announce at some point. Gail supported this primary children's hospital in a big way, invited us to her home, and all it took was her to say, please do, and my wife's like, she started crying, she's like, yes. Because that is something, we all have children, friends with children, family with children, grandchildren, and it's something that's high impact, and it's multicultural and economic. There's no specific economic group that gets to participate, and that's everybody. Yeah. So I think if you don't have that, mentality, even if you make the most money that anyone's ever made in the state of Utah, you're not going to be happy inside at all. Yeah. Because if you die with it, if you die and someone's like, well, Luke was the wealthiest guy, but he was a jerk. Yeah. Now, you won't care because you're dead, but you might on your deathbed care about that. But I think it's important.
Let's take a couple more.
Thank you. Jacqueline White. So a comment, then a question. I split my time. My husband and I live in Boston. We also have a home in Provo. And we have 4 children. 2 graduated from BYU and 2 will graduate from UVU. And I think currently my daughter is a sophomore at UVU, proud Wolverine, home from serving in LDS mission. And I just want to go on record as saying, I think she came out of one of the most difficult school districts in Boston with a 3.7 grade point average in all AP classes. I think we have to stop talking about UVU as if it's a place that you go when you can't go anywhere else. Okay?
Absolutely.
Well,
I'm not reprimanding you, Todd. I'm just saying I hear this all the time. There are many brilliant students. I'm the mother of one that choose UVU because of you, President Tuminez, and because of the new business school and all that President Holland did before you. And UVU is not just a place you go because you can't go anywhere else.
So the diversity of the UVU student body is actually interesting because we are increasingly a university of choice, even for the top Utah students who want to be in a more diverse setting but stay in Utah County. I think there's that. And if you look at our student body today, honors program is growing. 81% of our students work while going to school, so it's very interesting in that they work while going to school. 37% are first-generation students, so the first in their families to pursue a college degree. And in 2020, we graduated 6,410 students, the largest cohort in our history at the time. 45% of them were first generation. Last year we graduated.
Can we stop to that's so
amazing.
So amazing.
And last year we graduated an even larger cohort, 8,729. 35% were first generation. Wow. So I just think that when we talk about social justice or we talk about intergenerational poverty or intergenerational aspiration, All of that is happening at UVU, and Wolverine pride is a very real thing. You know, starting with my hair, which is, I don't know if it's visible today, I think it is. But when I came, I did get that sense that people were feeling like, you know, I just go to UVU. And what's amazing is to see that turn around. There is so much Wolverine pride today, and that is so important. That is by design. If you do not feel proud of who you are, where you go to school, you are less likely to accomplish the difficult things. And so I believe, just like the Catholic nuns gave me pride in myself because I learned to read and I realized I was good. I was better than the rich kids who paid tuition. That's the same thing, I think, at UVU. And it also, to me, strikes at the heart of what it means to be an American. What is the American ethos? What is the American dream? It is precisely that you feel pride and you can work your way through hard problems, you know, through Math 1090 or whatever the requirement is, and that you're not even ashamed to fail because, you know, who hasn't failed? You've got to be kidding. If people say they've never failed, they're certainly extremely fragile or maybe delusional. And so all of that, I think it makes UVU such an exciting institution for the 21st century. And I say that coming out of BYU, Harvard, MIT, and the National University of Singapore. I've only ever known elite institutions. I was a visiting scholar at Columbia University as well. And I am more excited about what UVU has in its bones and what it's doing and what it's accomplishing than any of these other institutions. They're predictable. You know, they're the top 5%. What is there that's so complicated about?
Yeah.
You know, the top 5%. Right.
Great comment. Well deserved.
Thank you, Jack.
And then a question?
Yeah, quick question. So I'm a big proponent, always have been, of women in technology. Big supporter of Silicon Slopes. Have worked for a Silicon Slopes company that was bought by VMware. I think, though, as somebody who identifies very much as part of Utah, we need to continue opening doors for women in technology. And my specific question for both of you, Todd and Astrid, or President Tuminez, is how do we get more women on boards of Utah-based Silicon Slopes companies?
Well, I mean, I think part of it is expanding the education side. I mean, the opportunity's got to be there because the jobs are there. The jobs are absolutely there. So one, and I really believe this starts not at the university level. It's really grade school, junior high, high school, making sure that young women understand that those jobs are there and they are capable of doing them. And then there is equality in pay. I mean, has been, I think that's improved very substantially, at least in the state of Utah.
It's improved, but Utah's still the worst for pay gap, gender gap.
I can speak to my company. So that was not the case in my company, so I can't speak to other companies. But I think it has definitely improved. And even providing leadership capabilities. And look, I'm not running a company anymore, so I can now speak honestly. Allowing, because, you know, if I've had women in leadership roles in the technology side, and not just that, by the way, in marketing, in finance, and others. It's not just tech; it's everything. So if there's a problem that exists in tech, it exists in every portion of the business. But working around, if people want to have families, we got to work around that, because there are baseball games, there are practices, and by the way, not just for the females, but also the husbands, if they have children, to get, because sometimes it's tough in a work environment to feel bad for leaving to take care of family issues. So I think we're decent at that inside of Utah, but we need to get better, and there's no question about it. But it can't, there's no mandate that makes that happen. I think it's literally change in leadership and bringing on the right leaders and supporting and if there's anything, if you finance the right people that have those sort of belief systems, it's going to happen. It never happens overnight in any cultural or social issue, but I at least the people that I know, that we know, at least say they support it, and it appears that they do support it, but it's important.
Do you want me to comment on that as well? So there's probably two parts that you asked about boards in particular, right? Did you say that? Yeah, so for boards, I think current boards of tech companies should just be deliberate and intentional about that. Never say that you can't find women who are qualified to sit on your board. They are here. So make a list of those women, and when the next member of the board steps off, invite a woman to join your board. On the education side, for UVU, the challenge is really hiring more female faculty in engineering and technology, because the more female faculty you have, the more women will go into the field. And then we do a lot of outreach, because it has to begin with that K-12. We actually have a summer program that we call UVU Prep. It's for rising 7th, 8th, and 9th graders. It's free. It's federally funded. We apply for that funding. 3 years in a row, if you get in, you get lectures in STEM, you get career exposure to speakers, you have field trips, you have projects. And 90% of the kids who do this, they choose UVU as their first university. So that outreach is really, really important. And the other thing that we do is we have something called seed pods. These are pods that travel the state with all of the SEE stands for Science and Engineering Education. So everything is in the pod. Lesson plans, 3D printers, HoloLens, augmented reality headsets. And we take that out to school districts, because teachers in middle school and high school and elementary school, if they're afraid of the technology and they're not trained to teach it, they will not teach it. And therefore, the kids do not get exposed early on to how fun it can be and how rewarding it can be to do science, technology, engineering, and math. The problem with women is larger in Utah, because I think there's a lot of socializing and fear, and that you are not trained here to believe in your entire potential. You are trained to think that if you have a job outside the home, you're going to be a failure. And that's very, very tough to overcome. And so that's on us as well to train our daughters and students to say, life is only lived once, and therefore you have to ask pretty early, what do you want out of life, and not wait for divorce. We have a Women's Success Center at UVU that helps so many women with programming, mentoring, and often they come to put their lives back together after their lives have fallen apart. And that's not a good approach. You don't really wait till you're divorced. So I think that's just things in our own socio-cultural milieu, if you will, that need to be addressed openly and without fear and without shame.
Josh Pitts, founder of Shred Media and Tokenized GG. So my question is around cryptocurrency and blockchain, and I know Todd and Astrid, I'd love to hear talking about the future. Talking with Scott Paul yesterday.
We'll accept crypto for tuition.
Yes, that's what we like to hear.
And we want to sell NFTs next semester, I hope.
You do, or you're going to accept crypto?
We are working on it.
That's cool.
We're working on that, and also I'm serious though about the NFTs, that we should really probably sell some iconic images and NFTs and raise some money.
So my question is around that. Being a company that we're starting an NFT company in itself, is President Biden and their administration they're going to make some type of announcement this week. But what is your guys' thoughts when it comes to the future of blockchain and cryptocurrency here in the state of Utah?
Well, I don't think, if you start talking about blockchain inside of the state of Utah, it's just what can be created here, because blockchain should be for the entire world. If it's a good, now look, I'm investing money into cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology specifically. There's a ton of scams, and look, this is my old school view. If you're doing something just to make money, and it's to your benefit, and if you get in and get out, they call them rug pulls or whatever, and not just a rug pull, but if you're building something just so you make money, what value does that provide the world at all? So if you are in crypto or blockchain generally, what is it going to do to change the environment of the world and benefit people worldwide at some point in time? So because I have a lot of people come to me, and we're going to print NFTs and we're going to sell them, we're going to make money, and then I'm like, well, then what? Because I've already made money, and it's not fun just making money. It's fun having something that's transformational, that benefits people very specifically.
Utility-wise.
Some utility to it. And I was just in Senegal on a water filtration project, but funny enough, while I was touring Senegal with some of the government officials, people were living in not in Dakar necessarily, even though there's squalor in Dakar. It's modernized to a degree, but you get outside of Dakar 100 miles, people are living in grass, mud huts still, but they all have cell phones. So it's crazy. They have nothing, but they do have a cell phone. So for me, blockchain is transformational could be transformational if the decentralized banking system does work and is accepted, or it's taught and it's simplified and it's easy and the hacking stops, because there's a lot of hacking and scams that go on. And hacking includes, the way it works right now in a lot of third world countries, money is funded through the World Bank or the United States or China, whoever, and the money never gets down to the people or the projects. So it's stolen. Now, the great thing about blockchain, it's all verifiable. It's all traceable. So there is something beautiful, in my opinion, that's going to come about through blockchain technologies in a lot, not just banking, but a lot of industries. It's going to be transformational and give people access to things that maybe right now a bank has access to, which is getting yield, lending money if you have capital, financing something that you have. A farmer in Senegal may have 500 acres, but doesn't have the credit or a bank that will lend them the money to buy the seed. Well, if you could tokenize that in a real way that's not overly aggressive, that would require people, DAO, doing things the right way, not just to make money, then you can absolutely transform their lives. So I don't know what's going to come about in Utah. There are things coming, but unfortunately, for me at least to this point, most of the things I've seen have just been, I want to make a buck. And I'm not into that. I mean, I want to make money, but I want to invest in things that I can say, hey, that was a really cool something we attempted to do, some sort of transformational business that provided value outside of just making money.
Yeah, and for higher education, there are probably applications too because of the security offered by blockchain. So, for example, it's very hard to transfer your records or, have that be certified as your real records if you move from university to university. So there's probably some application there. But the NFTs at UVU, the idea there is to make that a student-engaged project. So students working with professors with an outcome that you want, which are NFTs that are iconic images that could be sold of UVU life, if you will. So right now, students are working on that. And then, like I said, payment. I'm having, some of my colleagues look into that because at the end of the day, it is out there as a currency, and there's just usage of it now. Maybe 10 years ago, a little bit more scary, right? But not anymore.
And a lot of young people, teenagers own cryptocurrencies and probably have the capability of paying for tuition with it.
Yeah, but we're not investing our endowment in crypto yet. We're conservative.
Well, yeah. Some would say that it's more conservative to be in cryptocurrency than in the U.S. dollar, but maybe. Yeah.
Well, thank you all for coming. Last question. The event is Thursday night where we induct the two of you into the Silicon Slopes Hall of Fame. What have you, and it's like black tie, but it's like with sneakers.
Sneakers, yes.
Have you picked out your sneakers yet?
I have green, shiny sneakers. You'll see.
Perfect.
I never know what I'm going to wear until I'm putting my clothes on, so, yeah.
I may have to borrow your jewelry.
Do you want to? You can.
Yes.
My wife actually does. I borrow hers too, though. I wear her brooches. I was going to wear one today, but I didn't have time. But.
I need emeralds, though, because
Emeralds?
we're green. Yeah.
I don't have any emeralds, but I'll get some.
Give it up for Todd and Astrid, everybody.
Thank
Thank you. Thank you.